Welcome to the very first episode of the Akalband podcast. I am your host, Mubin Noor, and to be honest, I've been wanting to do a podcast for a really long time, but I guess with university and everything, I just never really had the willpower to take out time to actually get to it. And doing all the preparations into even before you start recording a podcast. And I kind of love doing the whole marketing thing, like making like Instagram accounts and like all that. I love doing that. So I did that like forever ago and they've been sitting there. So for the first episode, it's just going to be me, but I do intend on having guests on as the episodes come out. I'm very new to this and I'm trying to keep a very candid, casual approach. Because yet again, I'm new to this and I just want the guests that I have in the future as well to feel as relaxed as I can make them. And hopefully this will be a good thing, right? I know I'm very talkative and I like to talk about a lot of different things. When I was trying to set a theme for this podcast, the name doesn't suggest anything. It just suggests that we're like stupid people doing stupid shit, but like, yeah, it's essentially that. And like I was saying, like I love having intellectual conversations about technology, about not a lot about politics, but like social issues and all of that. So I really intend on making that the focus of the podcast, yet still keeping it loose, for lack of a better word, enough to experiment with other things. So I don't expect to garner a huge audience for this, but in the long run, if it takes off, then great. I'll give you a little introduction about myself. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. Grew up there up until the age of 9, and then my family and I moved to Pakistan. It was a culture shock for sure, and if anyone has questions about that, if any of the guests, then I'm more than happy to answer, but I'll keep this really brief. I'm 24 currently. I'm studying Doctor of Physical Therapy. That is my main career, I guess, but I've always kind of been into media, and I sing and I write, so I was very much into media before choosing to do like a 5-year doctorate degree. So when I was trying to decide what to make the first introductory episode about, I just thought, let me just go back and talk about what I've been doing for the past month. So I'm on holidays from my university. They start very soon. And I think for the past 2 or 3 weeks, I've been binge watching The Bold Type. And I'm sure a lot of you haven't even heard of this show because I was surprised that I hadn't ever heard of it either. For the kind of show that it is, it's a very mainstream focused show. I was like, this should have been much more popular than it is. So, but I'm really glad that I did hear about it. It has 5 seasons. The 5th season just wrapped up a few months ago. And I think 4 out of the 5 seasons are available on Netflix. So if anyone wants to check that out after this, I won't give away any spoilers. I'll just give you my 2 cents about what the show is and my thoughts on it. So in terms of production and acting, which I'm hugely nitpicky about, obviously the storyline is very focused on 3 women who are at a fashion magazine, but it's not just a fashion magazine. Overall themes are very feminist and very millennial, and I guess they include Gen Z in it somehow, but it is very three millennials, working their way into this, how they start out as interns and how they climb up that ladder. So, right, when it comes to the storyline, I would give it a 6.5 to 7 out of 10 because sometimes the story is very engaging, and I'm very nitpicky about like finding loops in the stories, what seems realistic, what the characters' arcs are, and I think for the most part they did a really good job. For anyone who has seen it, which if you have, I'm really glad that you watched it. My favorite character is Sutton Brady, and yet again, I won't give out too much in case you want to watch it. But the actress plays her really well. Her storyline is pretty consistent in terms of like a realistic story, and I guess that has a lot of what attracts my attention towards. So there are times in the show where I'm like, did they really have to do that? Like, I mean, you could have done something better. Or when it comes to the final outcome in the final season, I was like, you sure about that? But yeah, that's still okay in terms of production. The music in this is great. And after I watch a show completely or I binge watch it, I kind of tend to watch interviews on YouTube of the cast members and everything. And even they were mentioning, like, we put in Lizzo songs when Lizzo wasn't even that famous, because I think the show started out in 2017. And they're like, and I really love the music. And like, I'm one of those people, if I really like a song, I will make the effort to go look for it online. Luckily, on TuneFind, you can, for like very very popular shows, you can find the episode to episode, time by time, scene by scene music. TuneFind makes it really easy. But if not, I will kind of go out of my way if I really like a song. And I would compare this to another show that I watched previously, which has one of my favorite people on earth, Hilary Duff, and she was in Younger. And the themes are really similar. That one is produced by Darren Star, directed, I think he's a director. Don't really coin me on the particulars, but it was very that theme as well. And I would say the Bold Type is kind of like a younger, more millennial, better production version of Younger. But the storyline in Younger is very different. I'm just talking in terms of what the overall aesthetic of the show is. So yeah, the music is really good. The storyline is very interesting. It does touch on a lot of social issues, and it does kind of go into the Me Too movement before the Me Too movement even happened. And that's one of the reasons I really liked the first season. I was like, I knew at that time that the Me Too movement hadn't happened yet. And I was like, this was really ahead of its time. And I really appreciated that. And that's one of the reasons I continued watching. So sometimes if I don't like a show, I will stop watching mid episode. I'll be like, oh, I'm done. Like, I'm the kind of person, like, I've gotten used to this whole trend of us, of our generation and the coming generations, where we're so used to instant gratification when it comes to whether watching a YouTube video that's only 5 minutes or 15 minutes, or we have commitment issues, and let's just be honest about that. So even if I'm watching a movie that's been highly recommended by something, if I don't like the acting in it, if I don't like the plot, if I don't like the production, if anything bothers me enough to a point that I'm like, I think I'll sit this one out, then I actually literally stop watching. I pause, I cross it out. If I'm feeling that confident that I'm probably never going to watch it, then I delete it. If not, I keep it there and I try to give it a few more turns, because obviously when it comes to series, the initial episodes or the first few seasons, even sometimes, it kind of takes a bit of getting used to, and it kind of takes some time for the showrunners to find their flow or the storyline to find its, flow in terms of that as well. I didn't want to use flow twice, but I did. It's fine. So it can be kind of exhausting trying to sit there and forcefully watch something. But obviously, when it comes to like shows like Game of Thrones and stuff, initially nobody was watching it because the first few seasons, I think, as far as I remember, are kind of hard to watch, but it picks up really well, and that's one of the reasons it got very popular when it was kind of in the middle of production as opposed to when it newly started out. So just in like very first few feels of the show, I kind of fell in love. The cadence is really smooth. It's not slow at all. It doesn't drag on. Even up until the end, I think there are very few moments where you're kind of like dragging yourself or like having to convince yourself like, oh, let's just watch it. It's fine. Let's just get through this. I will be honest. I had some days around like the very end. I had on YouTube, you can speed up the video and it's kind of normalized, but when you're watching a show, I doubt anyone does that. But there were a few scenes where I felt the need to speed things up. And luckily, I'm one of those people who can comprehend things very quickly. So sometimes I will be watching YouTube videos on 2x speed because I'm like, I ain't got the time for you to take 3 hours to explain this very simple thing to me. I'm very impatient when it comes to that. So up until the end, the cadence is very nice. It keeps you very afloat, and I really like that about the show. So the three main characters are Katie Stevens. She was on American Idol. I have also auditioned for American Idol, by the way, just putting it out there. I didn't get in, but that's okay. I didn't even make it to the judges panel. I just made it to the producers one. But yeah, she plays, what's her name? Jane Sloan. Then we have, what's her name? Megan Fahey. She plays my favorite character, which is Sutton Brady. And then thirdly, the main character is Aisha D. She plays Kat. What's the name? I'm so bad. See, when you binge watch something, it's really hard to grasp everything. Her name is Kat Edison. Yeah, I have to, like, the only reason I remember Sutton Brady is because Sutton Foster is on Younger, which I just mentioned, and Jane Sloan in the series is repeated so many times that kind of gets on your tongue, and every time I tried to think of like Kat's last name. I'm like, what's her last name? Why can't I remember it? It's Edison, and I eventually was like, oh, like Thomas Edison, like Kat Edison. So those are the three main characters. And Aisha D's Australian. Katie Stevens, she's American, and Megan Fahey is also American, which I thought was interesting. And Aisha D's American accent is spot on. I'm very picky about accents as well. So when I didn't know initially because I didn't want to do too much research walking into a show because I was like, if I know too much, I don't want to get any spoilers or anything. But even when I did find out, I was trying to clock that Australian accent, and it's really good. But the biggest edge she has, I don't know if she does this to make the audiences better understand her. Even when she's talking in real life, she has like an Iggy Azalea accent where it's half American, half Australian. And I guess it's probably because she wants people to understand her most clearly, because a lot of people are used to the American accent being on mainstream media. So the plot of the show is based in New York, which is kind of similar to Younger. I'm trying to like point out similarities because I think of the two. And people always think of like Sex and the City, which is the ultimate, we have more than one main female and it's about like females. So for me, that's Darren Star is also the director of Sex and the City and who also did Younger. So, okay. It's set in New York, but I'm the kind of person who kind of goes like in depth when it comes to post watching a show. I look into a lot of the details, and they very rarely actually filmed in New York. So most of this was shot in Canada and like the French part of Canada. I don't remember what it's called. Something with an E. It's not Ecuador. What is it called? I don't know. It's filmed mostly there, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people find these kind of details not very interesting because they just want the show as it is. But like I said, when I am really into media, I really look into all of these. The actors, what are the actors like? What is like? If I love finding reels on set, what life on set is like, and I'm really into the whole production aspect of when it comes to shows as well. Um, yeah, so I gave this a 8 out of 10 on IMDb because I sometimes when I have the time and energy, which I do nowadays because I'm on vacation, I do go on an IMDb and give them my 2 cents. I didn't write a review. I thought of it, but I'm like I would need to gather my thoughts a lot more before I actually write a review. But I would highly recommend this show. Let me just put that out there. If you're into the whole female driven narrative, because some people aren't into that, and some people do identify as anti feminists, and to each their own, but it's comedy and drama, but it's not dark, depressing drama. It's like a healthy amount of drama, to be honest. It's like people going through real life situations for the most part, uh, and how they deal with these potentially real life situations. So, one of the best things about this show is the friendship between the three girls portrayed on this show. It is it's a breath of fresh air. There's no backbiting, there's no vendetta against one another at any point, which I love. There are fights, but they're natural, believable fights that at the end of the day, the characters are really mature, that there is always a sound, reasonable resolution to the fights that they have. And even with the rest of the characters, apart from the three main characters, there's a lot of sensibility. And I loved seeing the more logical and more reasonable approach to this this whole series, and I really appreciated that because I'm one of those people who, instead of reacting explosively, I would sit down, think about any situation, and I would very much reasonably break it down, and then like I'm a really calm, chill, relaxed person, and I really appreciated seeing that being portrayed in this show. And it's nice to see that all three of these main characters, none of them are in the same specific field. They all work at the same magazine, at the same company, but they're all kind of in different departments of that same thing. One is a writer, one is in social media, and one eventually gets into fashion. I guess that's a spoiler, but I guess that comes on early on, so it's not a major spoiler. And another great thing is that the head of the magazine is a female, and she is portrayed as an amazing mentor to all of her staff. So that was also really refreshing to see that initially when you start watching the show, you think the way this character is introduced, it's going to be some Devil Wears Prada Miranda situation. But as the show goes on, you really learn, actually in the beginning, you learn that this person is a very positive character, and it's very, like I said, she's a mentor to all of them, whether, because she's running the whole thing and she's been running it for I don't know how long. I don't remember the details, but the magazine has been up for more than 60 years. Because there is a very prominent shot of Demi Lovato in the background multiple times saying the name of the magazine is Scarlet. So it's like 60 years to Scarlet. That poster has been juiced in backgrounds and stuff. I'm like, they made that poster. They were really proud. I don't know if they got Demi Lovato on that legally, but if they did, they're milking that poster because I saw it a lot of places. It's not even a poster. It's just one of the faux magazine covers that have been on in the span of time. So yeah, I'm pretty sure this review or whatever that was is really here and there, and I'm not sure if you understood a lot of it, But yeah, that was my take, and I would really recommend this show. I think it's great, and I'll say this again, it's really not as popular as it should be. I mean, production value, storyline, the social issues mentioned in there, the diversity in the cast is, I think it's great. I think it was way ahead of its time when it came out. It caught up to the general wokeness of society, and it stayed pretty woke, and I really enjoyed the show. It's something that maybe I would consider watching again in like a few years, because it's not a call them, a sitcom. Yeah, it's called a sitcom. It's not a sitcom. Uh, it's an overall storyline drama. So I would actually consider watching it again. I usually, if I don't like something, I don't sugarcoat anything. If I don't like it, I don't even consider, like I said, I'll stop watching the middle of nowhere, let alone talk about watching it again. So this is something I would definitely recommend to my friends personally, and I would consider watching again. And I'm pretty sure this show didn't get as popular as others because it wasn't produced or probably marketed towards American users, and I think it was on Freeform. I don't think I've ever heard of Freeform, but I swear if this was on Netflix or HBO or anything more mainstream, then this would have for sure been much more popular. And it's like, especially productions that are not produced in America, they don't get very popular. Like, I'll give the example of Schitt's Creek got really popular. It's still not as popular as other shows, but I think that's also a Canadian show, so I think it's really hard for non-American television series to get the height that any random American TV series gets. Especially America loves sitcoms, so I think it has had a fair share of dramas. When I think of Peaky Blinders, Breaking Bad, there were like dramas, but I think it's easier for people to consume lighthearted comedy. And like Friends, that was really, I wouldn't say it was timeless, but it's very generic in a good way that mass audiences are able to watch it from time to time. It's not too specific of a specific era. So that's one of the reasons I think it's not as popular as it should be. And let's see, it just ended, which is kind of sad. And I think the last season is the shortest. It's kind of sad to see that it's ending, but hopefully now that it's a complete project, maybe it'll gain recognition as time goes by. So yeah, those are my 2 cents on the show. This show was actually based on Cosmo magazine. That was the inspiration for the show, and I just checked. It was filmed in Montreal. I did not know why. I thought it started with an E. It did not start with an E. Yeah, so if you're looking to watch this, go ahead. The fashion in this is great. I'm a mediocre, not mediocre, but like I'm moderately into fashion, so I was appreciative of them not looking horrendous. I'll just say that. Yeah, I guess this is the part where I sign off for this first episode. I hope it wasn't too boring. I intend on having some friends of mine as guests, and I intend on having some popular-ish people. Let's hope it all goes okay. So thanks for listening, and I am signing out. This is Mubin Noor. You have been listening to the Akalband podcast.